Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues, episode 12, Rutland, where the fun never ends because it never began. There's actually a little sticker in the window of one of the local bars. I can't remember which one. It's right near the Kong Chow Fusion restaurant. And it's pretty much true. I'd just like to go on a little bit of a rant here about my hometown, about my hood here in Rutland, the cold, lonely streets. First we'll get into the good about Rutland, because there is. It's not a bad community. It's just got its quirks and problems. So in full disclosure, it's a mixed bag, and I'll say the positive things first. The first good thing about Rutland is it is basically size-wise a good trade-off between having a community where there's trees, there's some rural stuff, there's nature, things are, clean, it's not choked with industry, but also at the same time having some place to shop. Like a lot of people in the surrounding area, they do come to Rutland for the shopping opportunities. It's larger than Bennington, it's larger than like Manchester or Middlebury. People up further, like if once you get towards the Virgins area, most people shop in Burlington. As far as Middlebury, I guess it depends on whether the store you want is in Burlington or further north in the Essex area, Winooski, or whether it's here in this area. We've also got a lot of historical buildings. Some of them are quite nice. We've also got Wilson Castle, which I've been inside, which is really more of an oversized brick Victorian building that simply has some castellated siding on it. It's not a castle in the sense that a lot of people would understand it, but it does have like the Swiss armor and stuff like that, and that's up in Proctor. It's not far from West Rutland, and it's quite nice. We've got Castleton State University now. Used to be Castleton State College. I went there. I liked it better than UVM, honestly, and I'm glad that they're turning into a university, and I hope they continue to expand. It would also help revitalize the Rutland region if they become more competitive. One thing I think they should do is have mortuary science, because there's currently no school in Vermont that has it. I think that would be in demand. Also, especially as the larger generations before us begin getting old and, not to insult anybody, but begin dying. I think that's going to be more in demand for some time to come. Some decades to come, you're going to end up with a hell of a lot of a need for morticians. Even if all they're doing is piling a body into the furnace to cremate it, there's going to be a backlog. You look at the graduating classes in some of those courses, they're not very large. We've also got the Otter Creek, which is actually nice. Like, for a while there, they were declaring it heavily polluted, and I'm like, I would drink out of this river. You don't know what polluted is. If you're living in Vermont, it'd be difficult to find a site. Maybe some poorly drained, swampy area that is temporarily underwater part of the year and filled with, like, backwash sludge or something from the roads, like road salt and stuff. Okay, that might be kind of polluted, but generally speaking, Vermont, totally. And Rutland County as well, very little pollution. We've also got a decent library. The Rutland Free Library is actually rather large for the size of the community that it's serving. And the people there are friendly, and it's rather nice. And we've also got some fine eating establishments, and I'm not joking when I say that. The Yellow Deli is the best place to eat around here. But now we've got to look at the bad side of Rutland. We've been hit harder than most Vermont communities by the opiate crisis. That is fairly clear. There is quite a bit of property crime in Rutland County in general. Not so much, you don't really get violent crime anywhere in Vermont. That's not really a concern. But as far as theft and, the more simple crimes, it's more prevalent than most areas. It's the dicey part of Vermont, which isn't saying much. It's like putting it on par with some nicer communities and more urbanized parts of the country, but it is dicier than maybe Essex or dicier than Montpelier or something like that. I think Barrie is the only other place you'd go to that has the same level of blight that we have, and they're propped up because they're so close to Montpelier, so all the politicians I guess go shopping there if they don't want to waste half an hour going over further to Burlington. So Rutland has that problem. We've also got a major infrastructure problem. That is, I've spoken of the traffic lights stopping suddenly, and they do this on a fairly regular basis now. I'm not sure why. Our sidewalks are a monstrosity. Now, that's the worst infrastructure problem we have In Rutland, that is the city generally, the sidewalks don't even extend this far out of the city. Not quite, almost, but not quite. Close, but no cigar. Some of them, because of winter wear and tear and not being repaired in decades, are so chipped and cracked and uneven that they basically don't qualify as sidewalks anymore. You'd be better off pulling them out and just letting it revert to grass, because at least that would be more level. Let people wear a little trough, a little, they call it Rutland. Let them wear a rut in the side of the road where they're walking, and it would still be more even. I can't even imagine if you're trying to like carry a lot of groceries back to your homes 6 blocks away in midwinter on those sidewalks. Some of them, they're going to be a problem. A part of that's because the city is rather hilly. There are quite a few hills. Rutland is basically a hill with a very small flat area that we call the downtown, and that's basically what it is. We've also got some post-recession issues in the city of Rutland. Specifically, there were a lot of businesses that went under. Many of them never really returned. Some of them tried to move around and failed. The housing crisis is mostly over, thankfully, and that revitalized the downtown. But then we've got perhaps the biggest eyesore in the entire area, which is our mall. Our mall is basically abandoned. One of the big storefronts is gone entirely. Another is languishing, probably won't be there for very long. Once that's gone, it's no longer cost effective to even have a mall. It's like nobody wants to move in there. There's nothing in the food court. It used to be, I remember 10 years ago, you'd go to Rutland. You'd go to the mall. Around Christmas, it was packed balls to the wall. Like, you wouldn't even believe it. Now in the middle of the season is sort of like an off day 10 years ago. I mean, it's terrible. It's horrible. Now, part of that's good because people are going to the downtown, or they're going to some of the stores that are actually, more in the core of the city. So some of that actually benefits the other businesses that are still around. But why do you even have a mall there? My idea is this, and I think people in Rutland should take this seriously. My idea is that the businesses in the mall should be out. The mall should be where all of the city and local state offices are. We should put them all in the mall to justify the fact that it's there. Castleton can still have its arena and stuff. But put the city offices there and maybe just like a concession area so people can, all the state and city workers can have a place to eat that's in the same building. And then all of the city and state offices that are currently in the downtown, if you remove them, you can get private businesses going in there. Now, some of those buildings, some of those offices would be equipped for residential zoning. That is, the lowest floors would be businesses, and then the upper floors would be where people live. In some cases, the upper floors would be like office space or something. Some businesses could move in. Like the main building there, right in the middle of the city, is basically, or one of the main buildings, is basically, it's right next to the transit center, which obviously they need their offices in the downtown. They can't relocate to a fucking mall. And you've got like the social security offices and human welfare and all of these other various services. It's like you go down a laundry list of different offices. Can you imagine how many private businesses could potentially have office space there if you allowed them to do so? That would continue to help revitalizing, I think, the downtown as well, if that were done. Now, there's another proposal that's been made for years now, which is to block off traffic in some of these side streets right off of Merchants Row and have a pedestrian mall, sort of like a Church Street arrangement. I oppose this idea, and for two reasons. Number one, we're not Burlington. We don't have the same tourism. We don't have the same artsy feel. It's more of a working class city. The kind of businesses there, I don't think would appreciate that. And then we've also got parking problems in the city already. I can only imagine if you ripped out 100 parking spots to make this plan, how choked off it would be around that area. Number two, in fact, the area that they've been proposing is very hilly. Now, what do we know about Church Street in Burlington? It's more or less flat. It's not on a hill, or at least not on a steep hill. It lends itself well to that kind of arrangement. Our city does not unless you're putting it above the downtown somewhere like on the main road, which wouldn't work. You'd have to do so much development you couldn't even believe it. Or you put it down further on Merchants Row itself. Not a great idea because a lot of traffic flows through there. I think it would congest the city. It would be attractive, it would be nice, but would it be economically feasible, number one, and would it help those local businesses, number two? I say no to both. I think it's a bad idea. I think a better idea is just to keep growing the downtown. Back off on some of the zoning problems that people would have. Like, oh yeah, well this building's too small and we want to put up something bigger. Then it takes some years and millions of dollars and an army of lawyers later, and maybe they get to put a sign out front or something. No, I think that's dumb. If you want the downtown of Rutland to grow, you need to be prepared to expedite the zoning involved, because there are a lot of residential structures that are sort of, multi-family rental homes in that general region, and they're not very efficient, number one. They're very expensive, number two. And number three, the city and the state prevent them from being changed by declaring them historical landmarks or something. And they're not really historical what tourist is coming to look at? Oh, this is 33 what's-its-name street. Oh, wow, this dates to the early 1900s. It just doesn't happen. Let them be brought up to code. Put up some actual apartment buildings. The lower floors can be used for businesses. The downtown would be much larger. It'd be more like the Burlington downtown or something. And anybody who proclaims, oh, well, that'll change the feel of Rutland, it'll be less scenic. Is Burlington less scenic? No, it's more scenic because they have enough money coming in to keep the sidewalks nice, so that they can have the pedestrian mall, so that they can invest in, well, this road is dilapidated, we need to repave it, or we need a new road here because so many people want to move into some, area outside of the core of the city. That's what we should be doing. We should be attempting to grow the downtown. It's more efficient anyway. It's more efficient to do that, and you can offer lower rent to people who want to rent instead of paying $900, $1,000 a month for like the two-bedroom apartments that they're getting in these less efficient home-style rental situations. Have actual sort of brick-and-mortar apartment buildings. We're talking the 3- and 4-story buildings you see in a typical downtown. The lower floors, you'd have access to the upper floors, and you'd have potentially a few businesses down there. And I think if we did that, we could have a higher population in the downtown, more businesses. It would become more efficient to maintain all of the infrastructure in that area. And I just don't think it would destroy the scenery. The area is already downtown anyway, so what are you so worried about? And might actually pull a profit as a city for a change. Now, of course, I live outside of the actual administered city. I live in the town of Rutland. But the two are joined at the hip anyway. I mean, one benefits, the other tends to benefit. One goes into downfall mode, the other goes into downfall mode. It's just it's a symbiotic relationship. By the way, they used to be the same thing. Rutland Town split apart from Rutland City. At the time, it sounded like a good idea. Now, I think there are plenty of people, at least in the city, that regret that fact. Of course, people in Rutland Town are still generally in support of the idea because we look at Rutland City as poorly administered, generally speaking. But yeah, that's just a little bit about Rutland. We've got problems. There are some good things about it, too. I like being in the Rutland area. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't rather be in the Burlington area. Just again, for the scenery, for the higher energy feel. And while it's so much larger, the metro area of Burlington has 125,000 some odd people. It's still low crime. They manage to make ends meet in their budget. Their infrastructure is better. They're actually capable of changing things around if they're not working because they have the money to invest in it. We could probably pull that off here in Rutland, but it would require a change, starting with, again, moving all those city and state offices to the mall so that the mall's not abandoned. They have plenty of parking room. All the employees, it'd be just fine for them. They can make do. They're being paid by the taxpayers. They shouldn't complain if they're getting their offices there. That would be number one, free up that space. And then allow more space to be freed up, really, by getting some of the parasitic class of home renters out of the area around the downtown and getting actual buildings that are meant for that purpose in. Get the state uninvolved in the situation. Say, look, just because a building's old doesn't mean it's historical. Doesn't mean it has to be maintained as is. It's just, if Vermont's going to do business that way, then yeah, we will fail as a state, essentially. And some of these buildings, you go inside, they're barely up to code anyway. It's a constant hazard to the people that are living there, and it's more expensive. It would be less expensive if it were more efficient. If there were businesses moving in there, if you had more business fronts in general, you could probably lower their costs too. The city wouldn't have to charge people as much to use these various. If there's more people, then the tax rate can be lower. If it's more compact, you're not maintaining any real additional infrastructure. But one thing is, if you want that pedestrian mall at any time in the future, you're going to have to think about totally reformulating the downtown. It's possible to do. If you privatize as much as possible, people tend to organize it that way anyway. But that's where Rutland's future really needs to be. If we're going to make ends meet and not, the next time we have a recession, we're just going to collapse outright. We'll have a population lower than that of Bennington or something like that. That's about all. Peace out.